Academy Award-winning actor John Houseman has brought the role of Dr. Kingsfield to television in a series of the same name, The Paper Chase, and he has another entire audience in awe. His work is so great. Beyond his work as an actor, though, John Houseman is also a distinguished producer and a fine director, and he's put part 2 of his life story in the fascinating account called Front and Center. And we're delighted to welcome him with another side of Hollywood life. Welcome, John. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
Is it astounding to you, after all your years in the work with the theater and everything, that you are considered such a fine actor? Does that bother you, that it took a while?
It doesn't bother me. It astounds me, and it pleases me, but it sure doesn't bother me.
No, it doesn't. You know, the role of Dr. Kingsfield, you play such a stern and unyielding, yet always morally correct man. And friends of yours consider you that way in real life. You think there's a parallel?
No, I don't think so. I think they know better than that.
No, really? There is no parallel?
Mr.
Not
Houseman,
really.
That we talked a little bit earlier, and the Paper Chase, as everyone knows, I think has been taken off the air, and I think it was one of the crimes of the 20th century.
Yes.
It was a great series, and it happens to be produced by a fellow with whom I went to college, Robert Thompson. And we talked earlier, there is a possibility that series will be returning to public
probability
television.
At this point.
How
It'll
close?
return to public radio next fall.
Public radio or television?
I mean
public
television next fall.
Is that those negotiations
yes, and
very far along?
the things that have to be done are not inaccessible. I think there's no question that it'll go on. They'll repeat the former shows and do about 8 or 10 new ones.
You couldn't convince them to keep it on. I mean, it got such great critical acclaim. I'm sure you must.
Can't convince a network of anything.
Well, even to
You should
change
know
the
that.
time period, that was always a sore spot. It was up against Laverne and Shirley and
Yeah.
Happy Days.
No, they don't do those things.
Were your viewers just irate?
Yes, actually they were. I don't think that any show ever got as much mail of protest when it was taken off as that. I mean, I know for a fact that in New York alone it got something like 30,000 letters, and everyone else all over the country got letters. Critics got letters. I got letters. So
You
it must have been 6 figures.
You really enjoyed that. It was more than just a job, an acting job.
Oh,
I
yes,
think you really
much more. I had a
took kind of a
very
personal
good
interest
time
in that,
doing it.
in the script and the concept. And
Yeah, and also I think we were saying important things.
Yes, you were. When did you first walk in front of a camera, and why?
I walked in front of I walked in front of a camera in a big part in Paper Chase when I was 70. I had done, with John Frankenheimer, I'd done a small part in a picture called 7 Days in May, about 7 or 8 years earlier. But that was a sort of private joke. We never took that very seriously.
John Frankenheimer was a great producer of the Playhouse 90 series, which you were
Indeed,
involved
yeah.
in. And that's sad that that's all gone. Do you think that
Well, it was
lives...
exactly the same thing. The last 2 years, they began to nag at us and say, well, the quiz shows and the game shows are creeping up on you. If you're not careful, we're going to have to take you off the air, and they did.
Having worked with Playhouse 90 and live drama on television, and then subsequently, for example, on The Paper Chase, which is done on film or some series on videotape, it must be frightening as you look back to think you were able to do a 90-minute live drama on
Well,
television.
at the time, it was all there was, so one had to do it. The
you ever
other
go back to
day,
that now, no?
I appeared on an episode of The Associates, which is not live, but it's almost like live. It's in front of a live audience, and I was reminded of those happy days of Playhouse 90.
Could you ever go back to that now, given the flexibility that videotape or film offers?
No one would dream of going back to an irrevocable live show when they can correct a show and help it.
You know, your book, Front and Center, covers your life from 1941 to 55,
That's right.
where you accomplished so much. Are you going to write a third one?
Oh, yes.
Are you?
It's already underway.
What will you call it?
I don't know, happy ending or something.
Oh, no, it can't be an ending yet.
No,
My
the
goodness.
third book will be an ending.
Yeah, there were some interesting things that happened to you during those days. What about Mccarthyism? How did that affect you?
Well, the whole thing was unpleasant, and many of one's friends were ruined or had their lives completely shattered. Some recovered, some didn't. I never really had any, other than annoyance, I never really was threatened. I was lucky. The timing was such. Also, I'd never been a member of the Communist Party, so there was a limit to how much they could harass me.
But didn't you have to write a letter?
Oh boy, did I write! I read letters all the time.
What, trying to say I'm
Well,
not
it
involved?
was a sort of a contest between the the people on one side and the other. What they were trying to get us all to say was that we'd been dupes and that we regretted it and that we'd never do it again. It was a way of defusing the last remaining people who'd been involved and who had not been ruined. And it was just a question of how far you went in admitting that you'd been, and I wouldn't admit that I'd been duped. So this went on. It cost everybody a lot of money. We got expensive lawyers in. Finally, I had my name on 3 big pictures, so I felt fairly secure.
What's the project that you are most proud of?
Of all the things I've done?
Yes.
All the things, yeah.
No, none. Always what you're doing at the time. And then you look back, and it's like looking back on your life, and you have love affairs that weren't particularly successful, but particularly remembered with great affection. There are pictures of mine that didn't do well, that I dearly love because they were the first time I worked with such and such a person, or because I was so deeply involved. But you add it all up. It's the only way to look back in your life.
One thing that interests me, your picture Julius Caesar with John Gielgud, James Mason, and Marlon Brando. Anna Cash-Free Brando was on the show a couple of months ago talking about Marlon, and in not a very complimentary way.
Yeah.
How do you know that man? What is he
Well,
like to you?
I've known him on and off for many years, not intimately, but I can only say that on that picture, he was exemplary. He arrived knowing all his lines. He was eager to learn. He gave no problems of any kind, such as he's supposed to have given since. He wanted to learn, and Gielgud was very eager to help him, and he accepted all that help. He was simply wonderful.
How about Lust for Life with Kirk Douglas, where he plays Van Gogh?
Well, he was a natural for that.
But is he wonderful to work with?
Yes. He's. I've made 3 pictures with him, and we've had a very good time on all 3 of them.
How about the story of your romance with Fontaine, Joan Fontaine?
It lasted a certain time, and that was that.
She used to rub, she was on the show also not too long ago. She used to kind of rub Olivia de Havilland's...
Well, that's an act that those 2 girls have been doing in public for many, many years now.
What about the collaboration with Orson Welles, Mr. Houseman, in the Mercury Theater?
Well, that lasted 5.5, 6 years, and that was wonderful.
How did that, what prompted that? How was that born?
Well, like all theatrical partnerships of that kind, it was a mutual need. He was very young. He'd never directed anything in this country up till then. And I was a little older, and I sort of had certain organizing ability. And between us, for 5 years, we accomplished some very remarkable productions.
Would you call him a genius?
Yes.
You two had a feud, though, didn't you, for about
Oh, well,
20
no.
years?
Partnerships that have existed and have been so close and that existed during a certain period nearly always break up. You can't go on forever at that kind of intensity.
Why is that? Because the creative genius between the two of you causes friction?
The situation changes. You know, he became very, very famous, and he really didn't need me anymore, and I didn't need him anymore at that point. So, you know, all these things, it's a little like a marriage. As long as it works, it's fine, and when it doesn't work anymore, then it breaks up.